Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mr. Rajeev Chandrasekhar, for joining us. First and foremost, I want to start by asking you about the Ministry of Skill Development, something that you've been very closely associated with. A lot of us are actually looking at how changing technology, the changing market conditions, how do you think that is going to impact on this area of skill development? And what do you think the areas are that India needs to focus on in coming years?
So thank you for having me, Madhav. I think it's a good question to start with. I think, it's clear and it's quite obvious to everybody that the digitization of the world, if you want to call it that, and most, particularly post-COVID, the acceleration in that digitization is, and on one hand, on the other hand, the really deep tectonic changes in technology that are throwing up new opportunities and certainly new challenges are increasingly pointing to the need for more and more talented people in areas like artificial intelligence, semiconductor, the future of the internet, and many of these areas. And there is clearly a recognition amongst countries of the world and corporate companies of the world that there is a talent shortage and the opportunities are running far ahead of where we are on the talent front. It has been our Prime Minister's view from very early on, since 2015, that we want to really take this so-called demographic advantage that we have of a young workforce and to convert that into a really potent, highly talented, highly skilled workforce for opportunities in India as well as abroad. And that is certainly what we've been focused on. There is a clear pivot or a clear change or a certain acceleration post-COVID in terms of what the types of skills that are now being prioritized. There's more and more of a focus on future-ready skills. Earlier, the focus was on industry-ready skills. And so I think that our ambition and our goals of really, in a sense, becoming the skills hub or the skill talent hub for this new decade of technology opportunities is the focus, and that is certainly the work that we are doing.
Right. Yesterday we had seen, for instance, the opposition bring out a black paper. They called it 10 Saal of Anyay, according to them. And one of the issues that they are concerned about or talking about is unemployment. As a skill development minister, are their concerns valid in your view?
Look, I think they were inspired by the imminent white paper, and it didn't take a lot of creativity for them to come up with a black paper. But look, it is one of those clear evidences of certain type of hypocrisy at work. Because one of the facts that needs to be told and told again is that in 2014, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji assumed office, the total workforce in India was about 41 crore Indians who woke up every day morning, went to work, earned a living and looked after their families. And out of that 41 crore Indians that went to work every day, 30 crore Indians had no formal skills or education. 65 years after independence, that was the situation of the Indian workforce. And the Prime Minister doubled down after 2015 and has really been focused on addressing the huge majority of people in our workforce that did not have skills and give them skills. Why? Because the job opportunities that are today coming and that are being created in our economy, this fast-growing economy, the fastest-growing economy in the world, require skills. There is really no opportunity today that can deal with or can be provided to somebody that does not have either an education or a skill. So if anybody has done anything about providing the skills and enabling and catalyzing young Indians towards these opportunities that are being created in the economy, it is our government over the last 10 years. So for those who actually were in government for 65 years and left a legacy of having 3 out of every 4 Indians without skills or education and left them on their own to fend for themselves in a fast-changing workforce, fast morphing workforce that were challenging people to come to work with skills, they certainly didn't do very much. So today for them to do a black paper or whatever shade that they are interested in is really, in my opinion, a sign of desperation because they're running out of things to say. And effectively, I believe very strongly, till the day we become a developed nation, let's assume it's 2047, these people will constantly be carping about something or the other, but they will not contribute to any new ideas, they will not contribute to the momentum of our nation, but they'll certainly come up with these half lies and half facts to create a narrative that is far from the truth.
All right. I have a few
And I just want to add one more thing, Madhav.
Yeah.
If you assuming for a minute that you thought that what I just said was rhetoric, and if you just want to go by data, the periodic labor force survey shows that the unemployment rate in India has come down from 6.2 in 2017, and except for a blip during the COVID pandemic, to 3.2% today. Number one. And I just want to add this just for your understanding and for your viewers to understand. The national average of unemployment is a weighted average of state-level unemployment. And the states that have the largest unemployment today are states like Kerala, states like Rajasthan, states that just had these so-called black paper authors in government till very recently. So there is a tendency to bandy these numbers around, hoping that people will not get behind the numbers and get into the numbers. But the unemployment numbers that are talked about and that I showed is declining, is still a weighted average of very high unemployment in some states, which is the responsibility of the elected government of that state, and which in many cases are the same people who are the authors of the black paper.
All right. I want to take you across to something that you mentioned earlier about artificial intelligence being the greatest innovation of our lifetime. How do you see this impacting on jobs in particular? Because there are many doomsday predictors who look at, how it could perhaps impact on jobs. There are those who say the impact will be to the counter. How do you look at it as also the MOS?
Look, Madhav, technology in general is disruptive. Technology in general is accompanied by change. That was true when the PC came on the scene. That is true when the mobile device came on the scene, and that will be true when AI hits. That was true when the internet happened, and that is true when AI will come into our lives in a bigger and a deeper form than it is today. It is disruptive. There's no doubt about that. What it will do, according to me, and I'm certainly no prophet of AI or astrologer, but I certainly have a highly developed sense of intuition that AI will really create more and more opportunities in the workforce in terms of companies, enterprises, startups, etc., etc. It will certainly replace some jobs. It will certainly transform some job roles. And AI in its current form will certainly allow companies to do more with less. Which is not to say that the doomsday scenario that is being painted, that AI will certainly remove certain layers of jobs and therefore there will be, reduction in the workforce. I don't subscribe to that, and I certainly don't think anybody who has a reasonably highly developed sense of common sense about technology will subscribe to that. Yes, there is going to be disruption. Yes, there is going to be transformation. There are going to be new job roles created, which will require new skills, new talented workforce, new talent in the workforce, and there will be some changes in segments of the workforce today which can be replaced by AI.
But are we doing enough to safeguard ourselves against the perils of AI? There have been deep fakes, several celebrities. I mean, there's a whole host of celebrities who've talked about those deep fake videos. Are we doing enough as a society or perhaps from the government side to safeguard against that?
Look, let's be very clear. I think the responsibility of the harms, the criminalities that are on the internet, whether they are deepfake, whether there's misinformation, whether it is CSAM, whether it is other kinds of criminal content, we are very clear as a government of India that though the responsibility for that primarily is with the platforms, the intermediaries who connect the producer of these types of unlawful content to the consumer of these kinds of unlawful content. So we have since 2021 evolved a jurisprudence, evolved a framework of regulation that squarely ensures that the platforms and the intermediaries, as we call it in our law, are accountable for the safety and trust of the consumers of the internet. Now, whether it is misinformation powered by AI, which is deepfakes, audio, video deepfakes, or it is misinformation which is text, or whether it is criminal content of some other kind, unlawful content, patent violating content, whether it's CSAM. These are all now squarely the responsibility of the platforms. And we have made it very clear, and recently we issued an advisory to them as well, that if their general counsel hadn't warned them yet, in their in-house lawyers hadn't warned them yet, about the consequences of having their consumers violate, their users violate these laid down 11 types of unlawful content, the consequences are pretty severe. And the consequences are not just about rapping their knuckles and saying, don't do it, bad boy. It'll be, consequences are going to be under criminal law. Because that is where these unlawful content, the adjudication and the solutions for those lie. So I think the platforms understand this, that we are living in a new world where the safety and trust of our consumers and users and digital nagriks, as we call them, are very, very important deliverable for our government, and that this is a responsibility of the platform. And the old model where platforms in a sense masqueraded as innovators and escaped regulation and left it to the government to solve these problems of harms is being replaced surely and steadily by this new model of accountability.
Right. The Prime Minister speaks about four cars, how there's youth, there's poor, there's women, there's farmers. How do you leverage technologies such as AI or other emerging technologies to help these segments, which the government itself has now, through the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, stated time and again that these are the focus areas for the government?
No, look, I think if you look at it, I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question, but if you look at it, tech in India is very now heavily embedded in pretty much everything we are doing. In governance, this is the same country which just a decade ago was being described as a country which was a dysfunctional democracy, where 100 rupees left Delhi, only 15 rupees reached the citizen because of the levels of intermediation and corruption that the government represented. Now, this is the same country, the same system that today delivers that 100 rupees because we have embedded so much of technology into governance. And those tools, those platforms are now increasingly being recognized by the world, especially countries that have not gone up the digitization curve as much as other countries, as open source platforms that will enable their own digitization. So I think, Madhav, it is not so much about saying technology for the youth, technology for the women, technology for the farmer, and technology for the poor. Technology for our government is a decidedly fundamental way of transforming democracy and governance and making sure that even the most distant citizen is connected to government. There has been a narrative for many, many years around the world, especially in the Western world, that technology is exclusive. It excludes people. Digital excludes people. India is a classic case of a country that is demonstrating at scale that technology can be used to make democracy and governance inclusive. And I think that is what technology is being used for. It is absolutely a vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. And if anything, in the coming third term of his government, we will double down and increase and accelerate the digitization of government and public services.
Right. You've spoken about the Digital India Act. You've spoken about the asymmetry between digital news publishers and the big tech platforms. Can you take us through what this asymmetry is at this point of time amongst the entities, and how do you sort of intend to address this asymmetry?
Look, I think everybody recognizes today that the internet that we all, I mean, I'm that old many, many years ago, that we set out to build, which was about connecting people, bridging distances, is no longer the internet that the utopia that we saw. This is now an internet that is being straddled by big, powerful commercial platforms that play the role of intermediating the consumer to the internet. And these platforms have taken on not just size and commercial power and other kinds of power, but they also have started distorting a fundamental characteristic of the openness of the internet, which is choice for the consumer, the ability for the consumer to select without having to worry about whether that choice is being distorted by some platform in between. And I think to maintain the openness, maintain the symmetry between those who create the content and those who distribute the content, there is a need for some sort of conversation and discussion. And if I dare say so, some form of a framework that will prevent these big platforms from exploiting the content creators, whether that's a large news organization or an individual content creator, just because they are the gatekeepers to the internet and the consumers on the internet. So this is a conversation that needs to be had. It is something that we have looked at very closely. We don't like the way ad tech and advertising and digital reach is being, in a sense, gate-kept by a few platforms. We certainly don't like that it is not allowing a small content creator to be confident that his or hers content is being monetized fairly and he or she is getting the fair returns for that content. So I think this is a conversation which is a sign of our own mature thinking about the future of the internet and future of how these various commercial powers and forces will play out. And it's a conversation that is ongoing, and I hope with the third term of our Honorable Prime Minister, we will be able to enact a Digital India Act.
Right. On the issue of fake news, the government, of course, has announced the fact-check unit. Recently, the Bombay High Court has asked a third judge to opine on the same. And, of course, it's asked the government to go ahead and establish or empowering the central government to establish a fact-check unit. In light of what the Bombay High Court has said, there's been a lot of divided opinion as to what really constitutes the fact-check. There are those who are saying, how can the government sit in judgment about a news in which the government itself may be a party?
I think some of these issues, Madhav, the debate is driven by people who really haven't understood it fully and still dive in and opine. You know, the internet, as somebody said, is now become a place where the Nobel Prize winner and the village idiot both have to talk to each other as if they were equals. So there is a lot of that going on. The fact-check unit of the government was certainly not meant to be anything other than help for those platforms who wanted to label misinformation but did not have any other way to label the misinformation except with help from the government. So this was about simply a way of making sure platforms were getting the help from the government to decide what is patently false and what is not patently false.
But would you be okay with state governments, for instance, setting up? We've seen that happen as well recently.
Look, I mean, I'm okay with you setting it up either, as well. But my point is that under the law, the internet can be regulated by the Government of India. And the statutory powers for regulation come only to the Government of India. So if a state government wants to set up a fact-check unit which will advise platforms on what is right and wrong about its government work or some piece of information about the government, they are welcome to do so. We have independent private fact-check units even today. So there is nothing wrong with fact-check units. I think fact-check units are meant to help the intermediaries discern very clearly what is right and wrong as an advice. It is not mandatory. We never meant the fact-check unit to be binding on a platform. It would have just meant that the platforms label something as being disputed by the government. And so one judge felt that was okay and the other judge did not. So,
yeah, my last question to you is about the Paytm Payments Bank. A lot of startup CEOs written to the government. They've expressed concerns about the implications of this so-called regulatory action against the Paytm Payments Bank. Do you think their concerns are valid?
Look, I don't want to comment on what is obviously an intervention by a statutory regulator. The RBI regulates the banking sector. I have only made one statement on this issue, and I've said whether you're a fintech or a startup or you're a iconic founder or whoever you are, the laws of the land apply. The regulators are the ones that oversee your sector. And if they decide something is wrong, you of course have the ability to appeal that. But that is the last word on it. And the sectoral regulators have absolute authority to oversee sectoral regulated entities. So, which is the case in the RBI, and I certainly, as a government, don't want to second-guess the sectoral regulator.
All right. Thank you so much, Rajeev Chandrasekhar, for joining us and speaking.
Thank you so much.